We are a not-for-profit organisation. We represent over 68,000 independent professionals, freelancers, consultants, and self-employed. And we're dedicated to promoting and supporting the landscape of the self-employed. So we come from a position where we're pro-self-employment. We think self-employment is basically a good thing for the economy. However, it has been noted, and the Taylor Review was kind of set up to look at some aspects of the labour market where things perhaps aren't going quite as well as they should be. And certainly there's mounting evidence to show that there are some examples, so we personally wouldn't want to overstate it, where self-employment hasn't worked out very well for some people. So looking at the Taylor Review, bringing us to that, it's already started. So we came to the Taylor Review, and we thought that what we wanted to focus on, and we talk about a few things in there, but what I'm going to focus on today is the main thing that we focus on in our response to that review, is clarity of status, because we felt that a lot of the confusion and issues that are being caused around this debate, kind of when you boil down to it, get down to this argument of, you're not really self-employed, you are self-employed. And yet there's not really very much clarity on how we come to those decisions. So one of the things that we call for, or we at least say the government should think about, because it won't be easy at all, is a statutory definition of self-employment. And we're not suggesting that there's, we don't even put one out there, but we do come up with a series of factors that we think the statutory definition could be based on. And the way that we have organised those is in our, what we call our self-employment matrix. Now, the matrix itself, I'm going to go quickly because I do want to leave lots of time for questions and things, and I know people may have questions about this. The matrix itself is a set of 13 characteristics. These are the core characteristics that we believe can apply to a self-employed person. Now, I couldn't find a good way of putting that into a slide that you'd be able to read, but what I have done is I've broken it into 4 basic areas. So there's autonomy, control, business risk, and level of integration, or the level of independence from the organisation that you might be working for at that time, and some people might say you should be an employee of. The factors are all weighted, so some are considered to be more important than others. The idea behind the matrix is that rather than relying on case law, which although very many people here will have a very good understanding of and feel is an adequate way to determine these things, for the vast majority of people out there who are working, both the individuals doing the work and the organisations which are engaging those individuals, they don't really understand it. They don't know, and you may have a situation where you have a business which really generally wants to be compliant, but doesn't quite understand how to do it. So our matrix is there to help those people and the individuals who might think, I'm being told I'm self-employed, but it doesn't feel right. Am I really? Let's have a look at this matrix. So as I say, I haven't quite been able to work out how to do it, but if you go onto the IPSE website, or the website for this event, you'll see in the resources tab our submission to the review, and it's all in there, so you can have a good look at it and tell me all about it once you've done that. This slide shows these are hypothetical, okay, so they don't get sort of too bogged down in it, because we just don't know. But what we did is we kind of asked around, we looked at some of the judgments of some tribunal cases, and we tried to work out where people would sit within our matrix. And what happens is with the matrix, you get put into one of 4 categories, as I hope you can all see there. The green is self-employed. The red at the end is not self-employed. The yellowy one is likely to be self-employed, and the orangey one is unlikely to be self-employed. And again, you might not be able to read it, but we looked at various people. So one that's been talked about endlessly and been talked about today is Uber, an Uber driver. We call it a gig economy taxi driver. We don't want to be too prescriptive on which company it is. and as you can see, they actually come out as likely to be self-employed, which I know will be controversial to some people, but when we put them through and we said, well, what are the characteristics in our experience that make up a self-employed kind of identity, we found that they did score relatively highly. Another high-profile one recently was, you saw the Pimlico plumbers case, and that's at the end, the one on the top there, the agency plumber. We looked at that judgment, and it felt very clear, and when you graded the information that we had on our matrix, they came out as quite firmly not self-employed. Then there's some other ones. We have an electrician at the very end there who is at the very top end of self-employed. Now, of course, you could have an electrician who's not. No, we're not saying that all electricians therefore are. We're just saying this is just a guide. These are just hypothetical scenarios. I'm sort of conscious of time. So that's a very, very brief overview to our matrix. And that forms the basis of our submission to the Matthew Taylor review. And we believe that what's needed is more clarity, not less. And we do think it's important that we're going to have these constant arguments unless we can come up with a way to have a sort of a universally recognised framework through which people can begin to decide where you are. There will still be court cases. We're not saying that the matrix becomes law. We're just saying that it's a guide for people that want to use it. Incidentally, we started by not thinking about case law at all. We said, knowing from our own knowledge of what we believe self-employment is, let's put down those characteristics. And it's quite interesting that we came back to so many that are actually in case law. That after having several meetings and quite sort of robust conversations internally on this issue, the case law is sort of does a pretty good job actually of sort of trying to get to the detail of what sort of working relationship it is. There's one final slide, if I may, Jonathan, quite quickly. This is on the tax issue. So this is somewhat different, but this is what we called for in our manifesto. We launched the manifesto for the recent election, and these are some of the things that we call for, and I'll very quickly run through them. We think that with all the whole gamut of issues and various bits of legislation which have come in the last 7 or 8 years around different ways of working, we think that the time has come for a strategic review of the tax system to really work out, and kind of referring to what Helen was saying earlier, that if you looked at the system we had now, you wouldn't really you wouldn't start from that position. So could we maybe have a government-led review of the whole tax system, and particularly looking at this troublesome area of taxing different ways of working. Caroline, I think, mentioned the IR35 changes the way that works in the public sector. We're aware, many of our members work in the public sector, it's caused a lot of confusion and difficulty. It's been very, very controversial. It's here now. But there might be ways that we could limit the damage being caused by that, and some of those are detailed in our manifesto as well, and we would ask the new government to have a look at those. The next one's quite interesting. We came up with this idea with EY for something called the Freelancer Limited Company. Is Desiree here? Desiree was on the guest list to come. She's from EY. She's one of the architects of it, along with us and Chris Sanger from EY. And the idea of this is that IR35 wouldn't apply to it. It would be a corporate form, just like a normal limited company, but it would be tailored to freelancers, and it might be taxed differently as well. Making tax digital, government, I don't know what's going to happen with that now because of the election results, so maybe that one's not so much. Class 4 national insurance, we were very against that. So against seemingly everyone else here, we don't believe it should be, but I suppose we would say that, wouldn't we? And finally, removing the burden of policy making from HMRC, though notwithstanding the deep personal respect I have for many people from HMRC in this room. And that's probably the end of my session. Thanks.